Okay. We good?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to our panel on snitching. The title, Building a Better Snitch, Steps to Step It Up. I'll be your moderator. My name is Ricky Nelson. And then I am going to take us over to a PowerPoint shortly, but I want to give each person here a chance to show their face for a second as Tad is flashing many colors. So, Jared, go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll go through achievements a little bit. So, just your names for now, and we'll be great.
Sure. My name is Jared Bailey. I used to play for Arizona State University, Los Angeles Gambits, and the Diablos Quidditch Club, and I've been snitching for 6 years.
Okay, Tad.
Hi, I'm Tad Walters. Been snitching for 7 years. Played for a ton of teams, originally Loyola New Orleans, and now currently for Boom Trade.
Okay. Matt.
I'm Matthew Cooper. I've been snitching since 2015, and I've played with UVA, University of Virginia Quidditch.
Okay, and Christian.
Hello, I'm Christian Barnes. I've been snitching since 2013. I've played across a host of teams, but most recently New York Nocturnes and New York Titans for MLQ.
Okay, well, for my part, I'll be leaving the discussion most you guys, but I have also been snitching for probably since 2011, I guess is when I started snitching. So a while, but I will leave all the newer stuff to you because I'm old and, fogies need to get out of the way. Host needs to allow me to share my screen. Christian, is that you? Great. Okay. Well, sounds like I'll be asking questions without the slides that I put together for this. Now,
you might be the co-host now. Does it work?
Let me try again. Share screen. Yes, it looks like I can share a screen now. So let me take this into the presentation format and we'll get going. So up here, I have some of your fabulous achievements. Everyone of you is a member of Snitch Team, which is great. Shows you contributing. And you've all snitched some very high-level games, either at MLQ championships, USQ championships, or IQA World Cups. So everyone here has put up some pretty great numbers. Now, we've gone quite a ways from the Harry Potter days of Quidditch with the Golden Snitch, and although we still wear shorts, you guys are the really only physical officials on the field, the neutral parties that allow the game to happen. So we're going to bring you guys through a few questions about your experience as snitches, being better, and helping other people become better snitches. So I want you guys to go through, you introduce yourselves, but I want you to tell us about your style and kind of the background that brought you into it. Just as an example, I am a very physical, fairly slow snitch, and I came into it from a martial arts background. So kind of give that gist for yourselves. Jared?
Yeah, this is a good question. I started snitching because I think like many people, their team needed somebody to fill the hole during practices, and I just volunteered to step in and try it out. I thought it was a really exciting opportunity to play Quidditch without a broom between your legs. A lot of freedom there, and it was just exciting to try out. And then it stuck, so I volunteered as a snitch for youth Quidditch events and at conventions, and of course at practices and tournaments. Personally, I am a mix between running and being physical, trying to stay on the midline as much as possible. I'll use defensive seekers as blockers when I can, and trying to use the other seekers' weight to my advantage to throw them off.
Okay. Tad?
sorry, I'm muted. I am kind of similar to Ricky in that I am a physical snitch. I got into it very similar to Jared. However, I was kind of at practices, and then also because there was just a need for snitches and refs in the Southwest at that time, and it just seemed like a better opportunity than any to still do something at tournaments when my team wasn't playing. But I'm a physical snitch. I really try to maintain, just like Jared said, on the midline. And I'm really big about kind of similar to Jared, using Seeker's momentum against them, and also using the Seekers against each other.
Okay. Matt?
So I actually sort of had more an affirmative start into snitching. I saw other snitches, thought that was looks like they're having the most fun, and so I started doing it, and it's my favorite part of Quidditch. I came from a wrestling and football lineman background, and honestly, I thought I was pretty great at that thing until I did MLQ and got eaten alive. So from there, I picked up a bigger toolkit of just being physical. So now I move around a lot more. I backpedal a lot more. I try not to only fight head to head, but I still love, I love the spectacle. I love putting myself into trouble for no reason other than it's fun. And I'm definitely more of a sprinter than a marathon runner. So.
Okay. And Christian?
I actually started snitching because I had first started playing Quidditch at summer pickups in New York City. And I tried beating first, and everyone was way better than me, and I didn't want to go in the field at all. And actually, Ricky and another person, Mohagog in the Northeast, were snitching, and no one else wanted to do it. So I was like, I'll throw on the shorts. I want to be useful. I did wrestle in high school, so I was about a year out from wrestling, and I was able to bring a lot of that into snitching. And then I will always remember the first time that we were in snitch range and lost on my college team, and I decided I wanted to be better so no one else would have to deal with that anymore. I am definitely a snitch that carves out his square, his circle on the field, and like staying there. I'll move around a little bit, but I find that for the most part it's wasted energy because Quidditch is full of taller, lankier seekers who run faster than me. I try not to throw people as much because unfortunately a lot of seekers never learn to fall, and I don't want people to get injured. I do use a range of skills depending on the difference in body type and hand speed against the seeker I'm going against.
Okay. Okay. So, defensive seeking. Let's jump right into it. So defensive seeking is a popular strategy among teams, particularly when they're down or if they're trying to achieve something with the point caps. What are your views on it as far as your role as a snitch in response to it? And how good do you think is the strategy for the game? We'll start Jared.
Starting off with the hot button issues already. I can only speak from a USQ perspective. I've heard that there's a difference with IQA on defensive seeking. Personally, I think it comes down to how you define what the purpose of a snitch is. For me, I think the purpose of the snitch is not only to entertain the crowd, but also to not get caught for as long as possible. So for me, if I'm ever in a position as a snitch where there is a defensive seeker, I'm going to use them strategically, boxing out the offensive seeker, standing on the midline, but on the side that is of the team that has the defensive seeker, and then placing that seeker in the middle. You can hold on to their broom to control them more, or on their shoulders, doing it in a safe manner. And if you see maybe the other team's beater coming closer, move them to the side. I think it's just a part of the game. And you still have to be on your toes for if that defensive seeker ever turns and either catches to lose or their team is back in range. So you have to watch out for it. But I don't have a problem with defensive seeking and the snitch using that to their advantage to last longer.
Tad, do you have a counterpoint?
Yeah, I do. So I personally do not use defensive seekers. I have always said that you should make it as hard for the defending seeker to defend you as you're making the offensive seeker to catch you. Because to me, if you are using a defensive seeker, you're being biased to the team who is down and allowing them to prolong the game what they want to do than you are to give basically the same kind of courtesy or bias to the team who's trying to catch. And that's why when I have defensive seekers, I'll usually push them away, and I'll run away, and I will try to, as I said, keep as much distance from them as I am seekers actually trying to catch me. And then the biggest thing I think with that combined too is that if you are always pushing away that defensive seeker, you don't have to worry about what the score is ever. You can just run away from both and not have to worry about them turning back around and trying to catch you. So that's just kind of a little icing on the cake, the way I see it.
Matt, Christian, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't believe in the existence of defensive seekers. I think every seeker is a seeker just waiting to attack. I think that unfortunately we have too many snitches in our sport who end up getting caught by a defensive seeker that was close to being able to catch to change the game, or a defensive seeker that decided, my team's never going to win, so now I want to catch. And personally, when I snitch, if you've ever seeked against me, you're trying to defensive seek, I've probably pissed you off because I've said, don't talk to me, I don't trust you, and then moved away from you, moved you into the path of an opposing beater, or made sure that you were 2 full arms lengths away from me. I do agree with Tad that we do need to be careful as snitches that we're not being biased to a team that's defensive just because we don't want to get caught longer. But I also agree with Jared that it is about not getting caught for a good amount of time. So I think even though I don't like running, I do find myself moving around a lot more if a defensive seeker is trying to post up near me, and things like that. I think that we get very deep into talking about strategy and stuff for defensive seeking. But when I'm a snitch, I like to snitch in a way where it doesn't matter what the strategy of either team is, right? I'm snitching to the game that I'm on. If a seeker's near me, I'm moving away, or maybe popping their broom a little bit or something like that, because I don't want any seeker to ever feel safe near me, because I never feel safe near them.
Matt?
I don't know. I think it's part of the game. I would never say that I was someone who likes using them, but I also don't like running for no reason. So that's probably my own biggest limitation why I allow myself to be defended, is that the idea of running away every single time the defensive seeker gets near me sounds boring. But I think it just sounds boring and looks silly. I don't know. And I kind of it's the other team's beater's job to get rid of them. It's not really my job.
I mean, I would agree with you in general. And for my part, I will typically just pull their broom out from between their legs and send them back so they have to run instead of me. But I think that you've all kind of made strong arguments on it, and the teams can complain either way. So what are we going to do about it? Before we continue, just don't feel pressured to kind of weigh in on a topic if it's already been said or anything. Panel's not too long, and we got a few questions we want to get through. Okay. How do you balance your responsibilities as a snitch and official? On the pitch, you guys can make some calls, but you want to avoid getting caught. So is there anything you do in particular to kind of keep your head in the game? Christian, I think you're the most kind of experienced ref here.
Yeah, so I want to first just be vulnerable that I used to fail at this a lot. I used to think that as a snitch, I needed to also keep the game as fair as possible. And I also used to very much think I needed to stop people from cheating on the field, right? So I try to do both at the same time, and I think that is very wrong. I don't think anyone should be doing that. I really think that as a snitch, you don't come to that game for your rules knowledge. You come there for your snitch knowledge and to be a snitch. And I think you need to have a conversation with whichever other refs around to let them know that they need to be watching for those official things. That being said, there are certain things that only you're going to be able to see and know, like impediment, charging, things like that. And you can let the officials know when you are free to. That means when you're not being engaged, when a seeker's not next to you. And if it's something that is especially regarding safety or something really bad, you have the ability to go down and no one can catch you to draw those attention as possible. Use your stoppages, right? I, as the snitch, have had to use many stoppages to remind seekers that if they punch me in the face again for the 16th time and catch immediately after, it won't count. And it's not on purpose, so they're not going to get a card, but it's not going to work, right? I'm not going to try to tell them those sorts of things while they're trying to catch me, because we're there for the teams that are playing and for those seekers. We're not really there to officiate the field. And what you do before you step on that pitch is up to you, but when you are actually on, like, your job is the rules related to snitching, the rules related to seeking, and that's about it. I do want to note that snitches should be able to keep some other stuff in mind. Like, if a seeker did get beat before they catch you, you bring that to the ref conversation if it gets there, or you just flag for your ref that called for the stoppage of play that it's off. But those are really centered in the snitch catch.
Matt?
Yeah, I see my role as mostly just a set of eyes. I'll come into the meeting and say, I saw this. I'll let the refs do the interpreting. But that doesn't, just because I may not know the rule book as well, doesn't mean that my observations are any less valid. I think that's really crucial that snitches be vocal about what they saw and especially what they felt, because I think snitches let a lot of what the rule book says is illegal contact on them go because they're not sure, they don't want to make the call. So I think, especially when it comes to your body and what you feel, snitches should be vocal either to the refs or to the seekers themselves and say, as Christian said, you're getting close, you're doing a lot of grabbing. You may not have to call back to hoops every single time, but it's like, if you do that in catch, I'm not calling that. Like, that's gonna be bad. So I think snitches have to be a little more vocal about that than I mean.
Okay. Tad or Jailer, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of building off what Christian said, you really have to be communicative with your snitch ref. A lot of times I've had snitch refs that I could tell were just really fresh. A lot of times snitch refs are like the most inexperienced, the youngest of ref crews. They're sometimes like the last person on a team that got chosen to go ref. And a lot of times they just do not know the rules well. And a lot of times it's not seen, because it starts later in the game, maybe it's not seen as an important a role as AR or being a head ref. And arguably snitch ref is the most important role, depending on the game. And especially in those high stakes games, when there's a lot of adrenaline going, like the last thing I want to be is having to make really basic calls, like if a seeker is beat, or not having to make them, but even have to tell, the snitch ref that they're happening. So I think it's really important that you're talking to your snitch ref, you're communicative about, hey, I want you to watch out for these things. And kind of what Christian said during the downtime, really being like, hey, that guy's charged me. Please talk to him, back to hoops, or eventually even a card. Seeker refs need to give more cards. The amount of times I've seen snitches get charged over and over again, or just get hit or walloped over and over again, and there's not even calls happening. A lot of snitches are just too in the zone to really be saying anything to the ref, or even realize that it's happening a lot of the time. But definitely for the safety of snitches, snitch refs have to get better overall. And a lot of that is snitches communicating to them, hey, this is happening to me. Please be calling that. But also knowing that you don't have to make, you shouldn't be the one making all these calls. There's a snitch ref for a reason. So just really make sure you're talking to your snitch ref.
Yeah, and just before we go on, I will note that it is changing for the future, that the lead AR is going to take on the responsibilities of the snitch ref. So theoretically, it should now be the at least second most experienced official on the field. Jared, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything the other panelists have said so far. The knowledge of the rulebook that you bring to the table as a snitch should first and foremost focus on the seekers. That's our first priority on the snitch, on the pitch, and we can bring additional knowledge of the rulebook there as supplementary to our refs. But I definitely agree with Tal. There's trust with our snitch ref, the lead AR, on the pitch, and during that communication, as you're focused on the seekers. They're going to be looking to make the calls on the beaters and the other players around you, as well as the illegal actions. But there's something that you can't read in a rule book, which is, the physical interaction of the seeker with your body. That comes with practice and experience, and talking with other snitches and going through games and understanding what impediment really means. And I encourage you to talk with other snitches and share experiences and talk with other officials and understand what that is ahead of time, because as an official, you're really the only one that can make that call, and hopefully have it be supported by the referee as well that's assisting you. But yeah, I think everyone's made really good points so far.
Yeah, now it's too big a topic to really go into depth right during this panel. But as you're all on Snitch team, any chance that there's kind of training guides on what exactly impediment is? Or sorry, not training guides, but just there's no training
materials.
Yes, supplemental materials.
Yeah, there's
Well,
a great series coming out later this year from Snitch Team on tips and tricks on how to become a better snitch, broken up into different levels for beginner, intermediate, and advanced. That correlates directly into the upcoming tier system that USQ is going to be using next year. So that will be used to assist with snitch techniques and advice. And we're going to be doing features in the future on additional topics like impediment as well. So yes, video elements to come.
Fantastic.
Great.
People have to keep an eye out.
Ricky,
Okay,
sorry, I
next.
wanted to
Yeah.
speak to something a little bit earlier about the ref thing. Something that I've noticed, and I think I notice it as someone who's like a higher up ref and a snitch at the same time, is that I think that snitches could use those minutes before they step onto the field a little better. One of the things that I do is that I look and see like the level of the referees that are on the pitch right there, because as Tad mentions, like many times we're not going to know the level of that snitch ref before we come on field. Something that I did as an LAR and what I've done as a snitch is speak to the HR and say, like, I'm worried about like the calls that are going to be getting made over by the snitch. Like, can you rework the formation of the refs on the field so that there's better coverage where I am or something like that? And like as an LAR, there have been times where like the snitch is now going to become the most important place on the field for this game. And I've moved myself over there and I've asked that sometimes. So I think like having those conversations, and this will be especially easier in USQ since there's now that brief gap before the snitch period starts. But that's something that can be taken to IQA, to MLQ, etc. If you do find yourself in a game and you're noticing that the calls are not being made properly, like at the next stop, like let that HR know, because it's that HR's job to make sure that the field's being covered.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Training. What drills can people use to get better as a snitch? Why don't we start with Tad?
Sure. There's a couple that I'll kind of go by. And these are things that I mean you can integrate into even just a normal Quidditch workout regimen. The first is a four cone drill, which I'm sure many of you have done either in other sports or in Quidditch. You can do any length, 5-10 yards, sprint, right shuffle, back pedal, left shuffle, sprint. Just do varying sets of those. I really like that, and especially when you're focusing on breaking down before each cone and actually making those hard, efficient cuts. Because a lot of snitching, especially at the high level, as you've heard all the different panelists have mentioned, outside of being physical, there's this movement involved of having to have this really strong plant explode and being able to actually like move seekers away from you. Even if you're like huge, guys like Gabe Garces, they have really, even he has a really powerful plan explode, and a lot of it is built in drills like this. So a four cone drill, definitely my first one. The second is you have to have a good back pedal to be, in my opinion, like a top tier snitch. Like you got to have a really good back pedal, and you can do that just by back pedaling down a football field. And a really big part of it is just staying low. I mean, there's tons of videos online on YouTube that can probably give way better form than I can even tell you here. But in general, staying low, really make sure you're not like standing up and backpedaling, because what's going to happen is you're tired in a game as a snitch. You're going to want to stand up and backpedal. And that's probably the most easy time for a seeker to catch you, because you're going to be slower than them because you're backpedaling and they have the full reach around and jump. So if you're able to like stay low and keep your butt out the entire time, it's going to be even harder to catch you when you're backpedaling, especially if you can do it at a decent speed that's comparable to how they're running at you. And then last, I would say, honestly, anything chest related. If you can bench press, push-ups, like variety of different workouts. But if you can just get strong enough to literally just maintain distance between you and a seeker, you don't have to be able to push them, but literally just hold between them. That will do you large dividends in the long run.
Okay. Matt, you want to give me one?
So backpedaling 100%, especially someone asked about smaller snitches, super crucial. You will get bulldozed if you hold in one spot. Everyone knows their own techniques. I would add staying in your stance. So you want to be low. Almost all the pictures you saw of the snitches at the beginning were all below our seekers, like chest level. You have to be able to stay like that for the whole time. Like if you ever find yourself, and then you should self-check yourself. If you're in a game and you feel yourself standing up, get back down, because that means you're tired. That means you're out of position. You're gonna get caught. So learn how to basically sit, wall sit. Be able to do that for a whole snitch on pitch.
Okay. Anybody got any tips for hand fighting or throwing?
Yeah, so I posted in the chat, but like I actually do take a lot of like my hand fighting stuff from wrestling. We actually used to do a drill where two people would stand in front of you and they would fake like they were gonna shoot on your left or right side. And we've done that a little bit on the college team that I used to be on, where someone would just reach forward really quickly on your left or right side, and you'd have to maintain eye contact forward and be able to shoot out and block their hand in one way or another. One thing that I think that people can do, especially now during COVID, is a lot of like shadow wrestling style, which is where like you're up against something usually around like chest height, and you want to imagine that that's a seeker that's low and about to go for you, and you want to imagine yourselves in those situations. My actual top thing that I do as a seeker, I mean as a snitch, is always know how close that seeker is from being a full arm's length to my tail. Because if they're further from that, no matter what they do, they can't catch me. And I think that sometimes when snitches are in the game, they think of the most obvious catch that's going to be there. And that's underestimating the seeker's knowledge. And what you should really be focusing on is when that hand's going to come forward and when that catch attempt is going to happen. And I've had times even where like I've thrown a seeker down onto the floor and they're exploding up from the ground because I'm so used to looking for that wrist in that hand, I'm already smacking it away from me. And it's just become sort of second knowledge at that point, second nature.
Jared, you got anything?
Yeah, I got one for the lower body and one for the upper body. Both involve doing it with other people. These aren't solo tasks. So the lower body is where you're running in a line with, say, 3 other people, and one is lined up one in front of the other, and you basically just run laps, and the person that's at the back of the line, their job is to run to the front of the line in a sprint, and then you jog for a bit, they set the pace, and now the person that's currently in the back, then they have to sprint to the front. Snitching is a ton of running. It's even if you don't run as much, your heart rate is going to get up. You're going to be backpedaling. You need to make sure that you can be comfortable with that elevated heart rate and have enough energy to last. So doing continuous running exercises for 20 minutes is going to be effective for you. And if you want to do a backwards run like that, that can work as well. And then for the upper body, doing 2-on-1 practices with seekers, especially if you're at a college and you need to practice that for the end of the game anyways, take some extra time during those practices to pull those seekers aside and work on hand-to-hand defending from their attacks. You know, when we're snitching, we have to be fast, not only with our feet, but also with our hands. And as long as you're quicker than the seeker on their grabs, you're going to win. There's one game at like Dave and Buster's where there's 100 buttons on the wall and they light up at different intervals and you have to smack the buttons as soon as they light up. That's a great game that you can play to train your hand-eye coordination and your speed and reflexes and in responding to stimuli. So, you know, fun things like that and just speeding your reflexes up.
Okay, even got a Dave and Buster's plug in here. Great.
Ricky, can I get a one thing? So
Sure.
Tad pointed out the backpedaling was super crucial. If you're not, if you don't like backpedaling that, you know, let's say you're not fast enough or nimble enough to move that quickly, one sort of variant of that that I really like is it's called pass setting. It's basically the motion that NFL offensive linemen use, which essentially is they stay low and then they sort of shuffle backwards without dropping. They basically keep one leg forward and one leg back and sort of hop backwards. And it's how they, you know, if you watch any NFL film, it's how they protect the quarterback from getting sacked. And so I think it's great for people who are a little bigger, a little slower, can't backpedal. They basically keep distance without, you know, you don't stand still, but you're not running backwards, which can be hard for some people.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's move on to our next question. So there's a concern among many players, some officials, that the pride that snitches have will keep them from acknowledging they were caught and influencing those calls. So do you think this is a problem? Do you think that there's ways to deal with it? Whatever. Jared, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think it's a problem. It's hard to quantify because no snitch is going to admit it. But we have to hope that that's, you know, not someone's inspiration or intention when they're snitching. You know, there's some really good seekers out there and some snitches have bad games. And you're always going to get caught as a snitch. It's not embarrassing if you get caught quickly. And it's, you know, it's kind of impressive, yeah, if you last long, but you're always going to get caught anyway. So, you know, it's a mentality thing. You're going in there for a job. You get paid the same amount, and as long as you're impartial and unbiased, like just do your best. That's all you got to do out there is do your best. No one's going to be really judging you afterwards. So hopefully this, if this is happening regularly, it doesn't continue. It might happen with newer snitches, but just understand, like, it's not important lasting. You know, we're all having fun. Just do the best you can and stay unbiased.
Okay. Christian?
Yeah. As everyone on this panel knows, and some people in the audience may know, I've been here. I've had like controversial, contentious catches. I think that there's a perfect storm that can equal a snitch getting caught in 2 seconds. There's a perfect storm that has a snitch there an hour long. I'm looking at you, Cooper. And everything between that is normal Quidditch. And I think that snitches need to do well in explaining themselves to their referees. In USQ Cup 11, I was snitching the semifinal match between U of R and Kansas. And right out of the bat, as soon as Seekers were released, I got caught in like a few seconds. And when play stopped, I explained to the snitch ref what I felt happened to me and had them join the ref circle so that they could make the call. I did not take part in the call. All came down that I was charged and there was impeding, so the catch was called off. Now, I made the decision not to join the circle because I was worried about being Northeast regional coordinator, still being made to snitch the game for a Northeast team. And I did that because I know how the community reacts to snitches getting caught and being called off. For other snitches, especially snitches who are working to be better, you're never going to get to decide how someone else is going to react to the snitch catch. And whether you think the catch is good or the catch is bad, it is your job to know what happened on that field, and it is your job to know how that catch happened. I think you need to be in conversations with your officials, and you need to know what the rules are so that when the call needs to be made, it can be made, and also that you can explain afterwards, because it means a lot to those teams that you're out there for, and it is your job to keep the game as fair as possible. So I don't think that you'll ever be able to solve, right, like the snitch pride issue, because I think that it's always going to look like you're prideful because at some level, like you put some effort into getting ready to go and put your health and safety on the line to go out and snitch that game. I think where the line is what do you think is the point of you snitching, and whether you're assigning that to a timestamp or knowing that you went out there and did your best.
Okay. I think you guys have covered this pretty well, but just real quick, this was a question that was asked in the chat, but I think it is appropriate here. Just real quick, give me your worst snitching performance. And I mean, it should be quick because these worst snitching performances usually take about 10 seconds to get caught in. But it'll help people recognize that even the best people get caught. Jared?
Yeah, just back when I was starting out during one of my first few games, there was a rule where a seeker didn't need to enter from the side of their bench. They could enter in from either side of the keeper zone's bench. And a sneaker, they just snuck up on me as a seeker and caught me from behind in the first, when the seekers were released, and it was totally my fault. Not knowing that and being prepared for it, and it was really embarrassing, but it was a good catch. Thankfully, that rule has changed now.
Okay, Tad?
Mine was, man, I remember it so clearly because it was traumatizing. It was breakfast taco. It was UT versus Lone Star. The seeker was Kenny Chilton for UT, and for Lone Star, it was Stevie Bell. And I had just thrown Kenny on the ground, and I was just standing there looking at him. Stevie had gotten beat, or I had thrown him, and he was I thought he was somewhere way further away. And then Kenny just was like, Tad, like, turn around, and Stevie was right behind me. I had just let Stevie walk all the way back up and grab it. And it was like literally the most shameful moment I've ever had because I just let Stevie come right behind me. I wasn't paying attention at all. And since then, I have made it a point to never let that happen again. I always know where the seekers are on the field. If you watch me snitch, I point them out. Every time I'm on the field, I'll point the seekers out because that cost UT that game on my failure as a snitch. And so I think about that all the time. And those are the kind of games that start building good habits in you later on down the line.
Matt?
So I think one way to keep this from happening is sort of promote get rid of the idea that that the snitch's main job is to last a super long time. I used to go into games fearing that I'd get caught in under 30 seconds or a minute. And so I get to the minute mark and then I'd breathe. I don't look like a fool. That's the wrong mindset, because sometimes, as happened to me, I did MLQ for the first time and I got caught in 30 seconds by a seasoned seeker who, he was on a community team. He was so much better than me, but I was like, oh God, I can't get caught. I can't get caught. And he just was better than me. He wasn't like a trigger or anything like that. And I realized, oh, sometimes that happens. And now I don't go in as fearful, because that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I looked like a fool, but then I got over it. It's just one game and it's not that big of a deal. So don't have that mindset that you think you have to last this long or you have to do whatever.
Christian?
So surprisingly, the U of R Kansas game is not my worst performance. My worst performance actually happened at Heroes versus Villains right before COVID. So in the game before this one, I jammed my thumb really badly on my left hand. And I wanted to switch off of the game, but like it was 5 minutes after the game started. We couldn't find another snitch yet. So I was like, whatever, like I'll still just go in. And I remember Logan's on came up and he reached to catch me. And I went to block his arm and I couldn't get the strength in my hand because my thumb had been jammed. And I went to reach out against it and I felt my finger get shifted again. And I pulled my hand back like as a reflex. And he literally just reached past me and caught. And everyone who was watching just said, what just happened? And Logan just held up the tail and asked me if I had been down, because it looked like I just didn't try to stop him at all. And that is my worst snitching performance, because I really I should not have decided to still do my best on that game. Like at that point, I was really too injured to continue.
I will say I have been caught in 11 seconds is my record. So everyone's got a terrible time. And I do think a lot of snitches just need to view it as, if you give each team one chance to catch you, you've done your job. So I think you guys have all exemplified that people don't need to be too proud and can play better. Okay, next question. So what are kind of the different kinds of seekers? And what do you think the easiest way to deal with them? Why don't you each kind of take one type of seeker that pops to your mind and give us the best way you know to deal with it. Jared?
So I'm 5'8", and there's a lot of seekers that are taller than me. Like Christian said earlier, yeah, a lot of lanky seekers out there. So I saw this when I was snitching in Italy at World Cup a couple years ago. A lot of those seekers are really tall and they like to dive. So, I mean, this plays into the advice that we've been giving, but with tall, lanky seekers that are diving at you, stay low with your, ready to backpedal and have more of a lunge position ready to go, so that you can fall back on your butt a little bit more and be able to transfer the momentum of that seeker. Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, is be lower than their dive.
Okay. Tad?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different kinds of seekers, and there's different, hybrids of them. I call like the jumpers, and these are the people like come to mind, like Sam Roy-Blatt, Margot Ailman was like this, Jeff Stywick, my teammate on Boom Train, and these are the players who basically just like explode directly to your left or to your right. And then they'll grab on that. And a lot of times they're not usually the biggest seekers. They're sometimes smaller guys who are just, as Cody Marshall would say, are just springy. They're just springy people, and so they can jump to your side. And they're really dangerous because they can really get so much distance on those really explosive jumps. And so what I like to do for players like that is, when I know they're ready to jump, that's when I basically either have that kind of plant and explode I said before, of pivoting one way, and just pivot the hip that they're diving on just completely away from them, and also cause separation with my arms. Or at the same time, that's when I'll take that huge backpedal step to create even more distance. It also helps because I'm a bigger guy and I'm a little thicker around the trunk. But for the most part, that is a really useful way to get rid of those seekers.
Okay, Matt.
Be very afraid of people who actually know what they're doing. That's actually a niche. That's a niche form of seekers. Not too many of them. That one, I think, in that instance, distance, backpedaling. Don't be cocky. You don't need to engage them all the time. That's the key, because when they know what they're doing, they can make you look like a fool.
Okay, Christian.
Yeah, I definitely think that you should never underestimate like any kind of seeker, but there's always a type of seeker who just like, it seems like everything you do, they have an answer to it. And most recently, this happened when I went up against Elizabeth Ng 2 years ago at Heroes vs. Villains. It just seemed like everything that I did, she did twists in midair that I didn't know was humanly possible. And I think that like, be strong in your basics, like the things that you know, play your strengths as much as you can, because again, it's not about mastering a seeker that's on the field, it's about doing your best as a snitch.
Okay. We're starting to run short on time, so I'll probably, for the remaining questions, I'll probably ask one person, and if you've got something you really need to add, let us know. But okay. So what advice would you give to someone who has just started snitching? Actually, this one I do want to run on. So, Jared, go ahead. One thing.
Practice. Don't be afraid. Step out there with confidence and actually be aggressive if you can. The seeker won't expect it. Step up into them and make that first contact. But just have confidence in yourself. You're going to do great.
Okay, Tad.
Don't worry about time. All the time I hear, such as talking about how long they lasted on the field, what handicap they got to. And personally, I don't care. I don't care what handicap I ever get to. In fact, I would prefer I don't ever get to the one-arm handicap, because that's exhausting. Or even the standstill handicap. Like, I would much rather get caught in 3 minutes by a really good seeker. Don't worry about time. If you can last a minute or an hour, as long as you are fair and impartial, and you felt like teams, not just seekers, but teams had an opportunity to catch you. So they're beaters and seekers engaging. As long as you felt like you did your job there, then it's on the teams to catch you faster than the other team. So yeah, a minute or an hour, doesn't matter. Worry about being fair first.
Okay, Matt.
Take it upon yourself to tell your team to practice seeking and snitching in practice. Even if you have to even if you have to grab somebody and pull them out of a drill and do it on your own, don't even go a whole week without doing some snitch work, because your team will be better for it. You'll be better for it. And a lot of teams just ignore snitch on pitch for unknown reasons.
Okay, Christian.
Warm up before you go out on the pitch. You never want to go out cold, as we say in wrestling. But remember, if the team that didn't catch you gets mad, it's their fault for not being up by more than 30.
Yeah. I'll add one more thing, which is just don't let people get you into a rhythm. If somebody does the same thing 10 times, then don't expect them to do it an 11th time. Just kind of keep playing the game as it is. Okay. Gonna go on to
If I can have one more quick thing. Yeah. Just also stay safe. It's a really physical position with arms flying everywhere. Take care of your own safety. If you need to take a knee, that's totally fine. And take care of the other seekers as they're coming at you. The last thing we want is more Quidditch injuries.
That's great. Okay. Actually, there's one other question that I thought I had in here, but apparently I don't. I'm going to ask Matt this, because I think he is the most physical of the snitches we have here. How do you keep the seekers safe when you're being physical, throwing them, that kind of thing?
So I try not to throw so what I would, so other people might consider as a throw where I put my own body weight into them. I tend to try to allow them to sort of do it for themselves. If they're charging at me, I will step to the side and let them fall over. If they're diving, I will guide them into the ground. I think those are their choices. They've made. Basically, if the seeker gives up his control over his body, I will not harm him. I'm not anything, but I also don't think it's my job to carry them, because I see people get caught, see people get hurt doing that. Just let their bodies move them, but don't slam to the ground. Don't pick them up. And I think grappling is no one's gonna get hurt grappling. Just don't pick anyone up and don't throw anyone.
Yeah. Um, I'll add one more thing because I do have a background from jujitsu and aikido, and that is if you are going to put somebody on the ground, uh, make sure you're in control of their body while you're putting them there. If there's a chance their head is going to touch the ground and you can keep their head above the ground when you're throwing them, do so. Uh, a lot of people do not have the training that football players or people in judo do to take a fall. So if you are going to take a proactive action to put somebody on the ground, make sure you know how to do it safely because that then becomes your responsibility. Okay. So what are your thoughts on the snitch tails and equipment? Tad, I'm going to give this one to you. Versus the equipment we had, Velcro, magnets, that kind of stuff.
First and foremost, I was going to say that it's tough. It's tough to have good equipment for a niche sport like this, where there's not money backing a lot of it. And this is said as someone who tried to make their own snitch shorts. I was using magnets for a while. The biggest problem is that it's just like not cost effective for basically anyone not running a larger scale operation. That being said, the people that have done it best, I've seen like the utility kits have been solid. I've seen a lot of homemade ones that I actually really liked a lot. I know that the pair that Matt Melton over at Shooty Hoops and K-Pack have been putting together, specifically K-Pack actually. Those are really great as well, and they're basically a better version of the magnet ones I was making before. My biggest problem is that we need to have standardized equipment. I mean, there should be just a very easy, hey, here's the shorts. They cost like also very low cost. And that's just something that's really difficult to do right now for where we are in the sport. That being said, for everyone that like always has ideas for how to make it better, keep doing those ideas. Like the fact that we just now got to magnets like 10 years into the sport is like pretty crazy. So I'm definitely open to more ideas. I've heard people talk about like flag football bands type thing. I'll try to keep it short, but yeah, in general, keep innovating out there because I feel like there's definitely a better way to be doing what we're doing now.
Okay. I'll just throw this out there as a recommendation for you guys on Snitch Team, but if you guys were to either put out a standardized design that you guys have found really well or had a submission for people to give you if they're making snitch shorts that you could then put out as possible supply sources, it might help snitches a lot. Okay.
We do have
And
some
then-
of that on our community resources pages online, so that is there. So thanks.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time. Let me just see if there were any unanswered questions. So it looks like almost all the questions got answered in the chat.
Ricky, if people have more questions, they can put it in the Slack and we can continue conversations there as needed.
Great. Okay. So we'll end it up there. Anybody who wants to ask questions in the Slack, our fantastic panelists will probably be there. I'll check in as well. And have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks,
I don't know how
Ricky.
to end this.